Amma kanatti aansee xalaa Profeesar Mahammad Hassan waa'ee obbo Ibsaa barreessan isinii dubbisaa jechuudha. Ibsaa Guutamaa is one of the finest and the most principled Oromo nationalist leader, who in many respects was responsible for the creation of the Qubee generation. That spearheaded massive, peaceful Oromo resistance, destroying fear among the Oromo, which was the main TPLF's weapon for terrorizing our people into submission. As will be shown below, the end of this brief biography. Ibsaa Guutamaa started his professional career as elementary school teacher. With his insatiable thirst for knowledge, Ibsaa Guutamaa joined Haile Selassie Second University in 1960s. He was a student at Haile Selassie First University at the time when students at the university were radicalized and energized. Ibsaa immersed himself in students' politics as well as in the activities of Machatul Lama Association. He majored in political science and was a friend and a classmate of Wali Lynch Mekonnen, a radical student leader who wrote an excellent article on questions of nationalities in Ethiopia, which horrified the Amhara ruling class of the time. According to Ibsaa Guutamaa, Wali Lynch Mekonnen, whom most assumed to be as a full-blown Amhara, was a mixed Amhara and Oromo background. Ibsaa Guutamaa served with distinction in the short-lived Student Welfare Society that was involved into national literacy campaign, whose charismatic leader was General Taddesa Birru. In 1966, Ibsaa Guutamaa wrote a prize-winning poem entitled Ethiopia We Man Now, Who is an Ethiopian, which raised the question that was on the mind of radical Oromo nationals during those days. When the famous poem was read on the last campus day celebration in 1966, many Machatul Lama Association leaders, including General Taddesa Birru, were present. Without doubt, Ibsaa Guutamaa was among the young generation of intellectuals who nurtured the Oromo national consciousness that was opposed to Ethiopian nationalism, whose ultimate goal was the destruction of the Oromo identity. After graduation from Haile Selassie University, Ibsaa Guutamaa served in different positions in Ministry of Transport and Communications. He also served in Sugar Corporation. While working in different capacities, Ibsaa Guutamaa, together with Baro Tumsa and the other nationalists, was also active member of the Machatul Lama Association from 1963 to 67, the first countrywide civic organization. When that association was banned in 1967 and the two of its leaders executed, General Taddesa Birru sentenced to life imprisonment. Ibsaa Guutamaa, together with a comrade, transformed the band association into underground movement that organized members into study circles and cultural committees. They also produced literatures in Amharic and English and Oromo language. I had a good fortunate of secretly reading the Oromo Voice Against Tyranny in 1972, which captured many imagination while I was a student at Haile Selassie First University. Even before the committee of the men in uniform, which is dark in Amharic, overthrew the Emperor Haile Selassie in September 1974, Ibsaa Guutamaa and his radical Oromo nationals had already exposed that the Oromo and the other conquered peoples of southern Ethiopia were landless subjects without rights, who were exploited economically, subjected politically, and dehumanized culturally. It was that in Oromo political, cultural, and economic subjugation that radicalized the Oromo nationals. including Baro Tumsa, Ibsa Gutama, Ta Abdi, Lencho Lata, Dima Nago, Mue Abdo, and many others, established the Oromo Liberation Front. It was the political genius of these leaders who transformed the freedom of the Oromo and the liberation of Oromia as the main goal of the Oromo national struggle, which fundamentally altered the course of Oromo and that of Ethiopia history in the 1970s. The most remarkable thing about Ibsa Gutama is that he never wavered from the original goal of the OLF. He is a profound Oromo nationalist who has profound commitment for the Oromo national struggle. Early under the military regime, Ibsa Gutama served as a governor in 2 provinces. In 1979, Ibsa Gutama, together with hundreds of Oromo nationals, particularly the OLF members, were detained by the military regime. He spent 10 years of his life at the most notorious Ethiopian torture prison known as Maekelawi. He wrote a book about the prison experience. We are indebted to Ibsa for exposing the inhuman condition with which prisoners were treated at the Maekelawi, as if they were animals. Ibsa Gutama's book entitled Prisons of Conscience, Upper Compound, Maekelawi, Ethiopian Terror Prison and the Tradition, is much more than the prison experience. It is partly history of the creation of the Ethiopian Empire, which was built on the destruction of Oromo power. It is also partly history of the Oromo national struggle for human dignity and the freedom of which was led by OLF. Ibsa Gutama released from torture prison in 1989 when the military regime was defeated by 3 liberation fronts, namely the TPLF, EPLF, and the OLF. Transitional government was established in Ethiopia by the TPLF and the OLF. Under the transitional government, Ibsa Gutama served as the Minister of Education. It was under his able leadership that Oromo intellectuals were quickly mobilized for preparing elementary school curriculum in Afan Oromo with the Latin-based Kube alphabet. That was most foresighted decision, which made Afan Oromo the language of education in Oromia. It was truly a bold decision that gave birth to the Kube generation, which grew up to the intellectual diet of Oromo literature, profound generation that was free from colonial mentality and the inferiority complex, which represented a shining example of Ibsa Gutama's lasting contribution to the Oromo youth freedom of the mind, the body, and the soul. In short, the decision of teaching Oromo children in their own language was an idea whose time was come. It was Victor Hugo once said, the most powerful thing is the idea whose time has come. When I visited an OLF-controlled area in Western Wallagga in 1984, I witnessed that Oromo children were learning their own language with Kube alphabet. Then every subject from math, science, philosophy, and literature were written in Oromo language. By 1992, teaching Oromo children all over Oromia in their own language was truly a powerful idea, whose time had come. It was that blessing of the Oromo nation that Ibsa Gutama was the Minister of Education in 1992. He bravely took advantage of this situation and implemented the policy of teaching Oromo children in their mother tongue language, which ultimately gave birth to the Kube generation that was shaped the course of Oromo history. In Ethiopia, power was exercised top to down by TPLF leaders. For the first time in over 20 years, the TPLF regime faced bottom-up Oromia-wide popular peaceful resistance led by the Kube generation. The TPLF leaders thought that peaceful Oromo resistance does not have current and the capacity to last even for a few months. They were proved soundly wrong as the Qeerroo-led resistance continued for 4 years, despite the killing of thousands of peaceful protesters by the TPLF security forces since April 2014. What the TPLF leaders never expected was that Qeerroo-led peaceful resistance conquered fear of death among the Oromo. That was the most remarkable achievement of Kuwait generation. As Robert Holmes argued, power dissolves when people lose their fear. You can still kill people who no longer fear you, but you cannot control them. Political power evaporates when the people lose their fear. That was precisely what happened in Oromia. The Kuwait generation demonstrated to the TPLF leaders that they no longer control Oromia and plunder its resources. The TPLF leaders felt that the widespread resistance was challenging and undermining their hold onto power. For the first time in 27 years, the TPLF leaders felt that they were humiliated and frightened by the people they were ruled with iron fists. They felt that they were under siege as they were losing control in Oromia. The sustained protest and the fortitude of the Kuwait generation and the Qeerroo-led resistance gripped to the power, to the TPLF, led resistance gripped the TPLF leaders with siege mentality, a kind of psychological state of emergency. Probably it was to break out of that siege mentality which forced the TPLF leaders to temporarily tolerate the reform initiated by Team Lamma Magarsa and Dr. Abiy Ahmed. Finally, Ibsa Gutama is not only one of the most prominent leaders produced by Oromo national struggle, but also he is a writer. Besides his presence of conscience Upper Compound Maikalawi Ethiopian Terror Prison in Tradition book, he is also the author of massive 903 pages of special Oromo dictionary, which is huge contribution to the growing literature of Oromo language. For this perspective, it is almost impossible to fully capture Ibsa Gutama's multi-faced contribution to Oromo national struggle in such biography. Professor Mohammed Hassan, thank you.